I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box, and you cannot compare them at all. So don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, yeah. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, woo. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. It is Friday and we are continuing our march through Dynasty Wide Receivers with our middle chunk. We also have a little bit of news. Dennis, we got some clarity finally on Aaron Rodgers. The Vikings are going with J.J. McCarthy, will not be pursuing Aaron Rodgers. And then he went and visited the Steelers today, apparently emerging from the darkness, so that he could meet Mike Tomlin. No contract yet, but do you think this is a hopeful sign that the saga that won't end this offseason is nearing its conclusion?
Well, I think it's fantastic that Kevin O'Connell said, look, we don't need this poison in our locker room. We've got a young quarterback who was trending towards winning the job last year over Sam Darnold before he tore his meniscus.
He was squarely behind Sam Darnold from the jump. He was never trending toward.
It felt like, it was one of those, he's our first round pick and we want to do everything we can to get him in there. And yes, Darnold is playing well, but I think he would have.
I completely disagree. They said from the jump that he was not going to start, and he was. Do you remember his first training camp passes were so bad they were talking about the Vikings getting fleeced?
Well, as a Ohio State fan, Michigan certainly had the propensity to take the ball out of his hands. So,
yes,
but I view him often through hateful rose-colored glasses. But no, I think Rodgers. I think he should retire. I think it's one of those. The mind is willing, the body isn't, or maybe the body's willing and the mind isn't. I think sometimes he looks around and he's like, I can't make this kind of money anywhere else. And I still got the spotlight on me. And I don't know. I think that choosing Pittsburgh over New York, probably a good idea based on their offensive lines. I think if I had to pick one of those two head coaches that's going to be on the street next year, it would probably be Daboll. And if I'm Rodgers and I want to try to play 2 more years, it makes sense to go to Pittsburgh. I don't know how well him and George Pickens will get along. I also don't know if Pickens will be on the team when week 1 rolls around.
I think they'll keep him, but I don't know. It doesn't seem like the Pittsburgh players they've talked to are that interested in Rodgers. And they've said they're comfortable, rolling Mason Rudolph, which may or may not be a smoke screen. I'm with you. I think it'd be better if Rodgers retired. I don't think he's going to.
I don't think he's going to either. I think he looks around and is like, it's like taking candy from a baby. These people are going to give me $10 million, $15 million, whatever.
I think it's more than that. I think from an ego standpoint, he doesn't want to go out. with any of the last 3 seasons that he's had, because he went out kind of failing
either
in
go out-
Green Bay, or
You go out on top, or the league takes you out on bottom.
but I think if let's say the Jets had won 9 or 10 games, snuck into the playoffs and lost in the first round, he probably still would have been okay retiring. I did my best. We just weren't good enough. But you go 5-12, and people are talking to you about being a clubhouse cancer. That maybe sticks in your,
Well, I don't think him being a clubhouse cancer is news. I
might
feel
be
like
to him. I don't know. Have you met Aaron Rodgers?
when he was younger and better, you get away with stuff like that when you're good. You get more chances. You get a longer runway to be an asshole, and
I think he
as long
also,
as you're producing.
I think part of him also doesn't want Matt LaFleur to be correct, which LaFleur thought he was washed, and it's just time to push him out of
And
Green
he's been
Bay.
right.
And so far, he's been proven right. So, speaking of guys we might have questions about, Brandon Cooks signs a 2-year deal to go back to the Saints. Saints need more pass catchers. Cooks was real hot or cold with the Cowboys, and I feel like he was real hot or cold. Was it the Texans he was with before that?
I just had him pulled up here. Yeah.
Yeah, he was so great.
He was in Houston for 3 seasons before that.
Yeah, he was so great. We forgot he was there.
I mean, he had his best season in Houston. He had 2 1,000-yard seasons in Houston. So I guess that's not all scored. Let's see. In Houston, where'd it go? Caught 228 passes for 2,886 yards and 15 touchdowns. I mean, he wasn't.
I forgot he was with the Cowboys for 2 years. Wow,
Yeah.
that was 2 really.
Yeah, caught 80 passes for 916 yards and 11 touchdowns.
So he hasn't had a 1,000-yard season in 3 years. He hasn't really. His first year with the Cowboys, I'd say he got saved a little for fantasy because he had 8 touchdowns.
Yeah.
That hasn't been necessarily the arc of his career. That was the most touchdowns he'd had since he was a Saint in 2016. Feels like more of a veteran kind of depth piece. I still think I would rather Olave if he's still alive and Rashid Shaheed.
Yeah, it feels like they're going to have a trio. Olave's the clear number 1. Shaheed will be the guy that provides the big play. And then Shaheed and Cooks, they're going to go back and forth, I think, all season long, provided all 3 of them and Derek Carr stay healthy. Those 2 guys will battle back and forth for the who's going to be the wide receiver 2 on this team in any given week. I feel like, they're wide receiver. See, Shaheed's probably a high-end wide receiver 4 with low-end wide receiver 2 upside, and Cooks is probably a low-end 4, high-end 5 with wide receiver 3 upside.
It feels generous, but I guess
it would depend. It would. I mean, Cooks' upside is going to come from either Shaheed or Olave getting injured or crap in the bed.
Couple of guys, the names we might recognize, all signed 1-year deals. Let me know if any of these strike you. Tyler Conklin, the tight end, goes to the Los Angeles Chargers. Michael Gallup, who was a Cowboy that went to the Raiders and retired before playing, came out of retirement to sign with the Commanders. And Rondale Moore, who missed all of last season with an injury, signed a 1-year deal with the Vikings. I think the only one that I would probably consider rostering in fantasy is Conklin, who had some upside with the Jets, and given that the Chargers would like to be able to have a pass-catching tight end, might have some good upside there.
Yeah, he was tight end 20 last year. He did have 6 double-digit games through week 17. He's steady. He's a 2-way tight end. You don't have to take him off the field. He's a good receiver. He's not dynamic by any stretch, but I think he's a guy that the Chargers can plug in. He can play 90% of the snaps. Give him 5 targets a game, 6 targets a game. He's going to probably produce, what do you think, 50 receptions for 650 yards and 6 touchdowns?
Could. I think the only danger I'll say at this point in time is I'm rostering because I'm interested in upside, but it's not a huge money deal and it's 1 year. And if the Chargers take, like, if Loveland falls and they take him in the first round,
It's over.
then it's, then it's over. But
Then he becomes Pharaoh Brown.
there's some streaming tight end, I think, ability, some, wait on tight end and pick up a group of guys. If I see Conklin out there, I think he starts over a Disley, who I think is still there.
Yeah, Stone Smart.
Stone
I think he
Smart.
might have left, actually.
Yeah, I think he and Hayden Hurst were our free agents, but I think he starts over Disley, who they said they got more because he was a good blocker. And I think there could be some upside. Chargers starting to put together maybe a little bit of a more robust passing game.
Gallup is a tough one, though, because, like, he's still fast, and he was coming off an injury, and it almost felt like he was like, yeah, I want to keep playing. And then he was just like, man, I'm just beat up. And
I don't see him getting enough.
At best, he's going to be wide receiver 3.
At best.
And then they've got Zach
option
Ertz
number 4. Also. Yeah. That's with Ertz coming back and them trading for Deebo Samuel. Now, if you would have told me Michael Gallup came in there and he was competing against just Noah Brown and Olamide Zacchaeus, and they were trying to get Ben Sinnott up and going, and they needed weapons, maybe. But in this current situation, I honestly don't know if that version of him is better than Noah Brown. He was not tracking to even be the wide receiver 3 for the Raiders last year, which is part of the reason that he up and retired. He was not beating out Jalen Guyton, and Trey Tucker. That didn't strike me as a great sign. Couple of teams proposed rule changes. We won't know until the owners meet on their meetings start March 30th, so it's still a week or two. But I want you to tell me if you think any of these will pass. The Packers put forward to ban the tush push. The Eagles have put forward to change the regular season overtime rules to mirror playoff overtime. And your Detroit Lions put forward a couple of suggestions. The first is no automatic first down for illegal contact and defensive holding, for which the Chiefs were the largest beneficiary the last 2 years, and the Lions, no surprise, were the biggest victims the last 2 years in terms of the number of first downs. But they also put forward one that would change playoff seeding so that among wild card teams, if you had a better record than the division winner, you would get to be the home team. And there's been a lot of debate back and forth. I'll be honest, I think the only two that will pass is the overtime change, which feels like a no-brainer to have the same rules throughout because people have trouble keeping track. And I think the illegal contact defensive holding not being an automatic first down has a chance of changing. I don't think that enough owners are going to pass a playoff change, and I don't think there are enough people that are going to punitively ban the tush push, because they said you need a 2/3 majority, so you have to have 24 or 25 of the 32 owners. I don't think they're getting there.
I mean, so what's going to be the next play they ban? The RPO, because Baltimore runs it so well? I mean,
well, and a lot of teams have started using the tush push that have bigger QBs, and they aren't always as successful. But I just don't see that one going out.
Yeah, that seems stupid. I mean, what we're going to ban the forward pass because Patrick Mahomes is so successful at it? I don't know. It just
ban the underhand throw because he's so successful.
Right. I don't know. That to me, that just is that's crazy. And I'm with you. I don't expect that to pass. So the defensive holding one, to me, that feels like if you take away that first automatic first down, it becomes like the college pass interference rule, where they know it's only a 15-yard penalty, and if they're beaten, they can get their hand on that receiver. They're going to grab him and throw him down because they know they're not giving up 50 yards. They're just giving up a 15-yard penalty.
The place where defensive holding is called the most is a defensive lineman trying to throw an offensive lineman. And the one that it really impacts pass is illegal contact. If you grab while the ball is in the air, that's always considered pass interference.
Right.
Which goes down the defensive holding. If it's in a pass play, usually happens early in a play, not away from the ball. But I think the one that they're trying to get from, it is. I do think there's enough teams that have been burned by it being 3rd and 30, and you get tagged because your guy had a hand on him at 6 yards instead of 5 yards, and it gives them a 5-yard penalty and an automatic first down. I would love to see that not be an automatic first down. I'm all in for that, and I've seen it benefit I've seen it go both ways, where it pisses you off or it gives you a free first down. I just think that's too ridiculous.
Yeah, it's that one. To me, it just feels like it's probably going to be close on whether or not it passes. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people will be like, yeah, that makes perfect sense. But I don't know. I feel like interior holding happens on offense and defense on, pretty much every play. And sometimes it's called and sometimes it's not. And, when you've got 10 guys in there, doing, hand-to-hand Mortal Kombat, some shit's going to get grabbed. And you just have to, I don't know, some of it, I guess they call meaningless holding calls away from the play that have no impact on the play frequently enough that why change this other one,
But on offense, you just get a yardage penalty. I mean, I'd be fine too if you changed defensive holding to be 10 yards, but it wasn't an automatic first down. I mean, make holding.
Right. Whether it's offense or defense, 10 yards. Yeah. That would make sense.
You can.
I don't think the seating one will pass. There's just, that's like, I get it. You want to.
I go back and forth because we had a 14-win Minnesota team that had the bad luck of being in the same division as Detroit. But I am still, and I've heard this argument made a few times, I am also of the opinion that winning your division means something and has to mean something. And if winning your division, you fought hard to win your division, you beat who was in front of you, and that was the people in your division, and you end up on the road against a wild card team that had a softer schedule, that kind of takes that away. So, your privilege of being a wild card is you got into the playoffs.
Correct.
And we've seen plenty of wild card teams make a run. So,
yep.
Well, we will find out if how many or any of these pass on our April 1st show. No joke about it. But the owners meeting starts the 30th, so we should hopefully know by the time we get to that Tuesday show. We are going to dive back into Dynasty Wide Receiver rankings. We did 75 to 51 on Tuesday. We're going to continue with the next chunk, going 50 to 26. This would be your wide receiver 3 and 4 guys for the most part. So, Dennis, why don't you do the first chunk? Why don't you do wide receiver 50 to wide receiver 37? That'll get us right, basically the wide receiver 4 group.
Right on. All right. So at 50, I got the fighting Cleveland Browns, Cedric Tillman, based off of his, 3-game sample.
It was a spectacular 3 games, though.
I mean, it's going to come down. I think for Tillman and Judy, it's going to come down to what happens at quarterback. And I heard, listening to local radio here today on my way to work, one of the things they were saying was, we get it. Kenny Pickett's, he's not a savior. He isn't gonna he isn't gonna come in and blow the doors off the roof. But if you look at his, his career at Pittsburgh, a lot of what they did was similar to the Cleveland Browns scheme. It's timing, it's short passes. He's not going to be required to play, to throw deep a lot. Cleveland's got a pretty good offensive line. Running game is up in the air with Nick Chubb coming back from an injury and being a free agent. They've got some stuff. But Tillman and Judy and David Njoku, they do have some receiving options. So I got Tillman at 50. I like him. He was the guy I liked coming out of Tennessee that year. Liked him so much more than Jalen Hyatt. So I got Tillman there. 49, I got Ricky Pearsall. The 49ers have a, how are those receivers going to shake out? It feels like Ayuk is the clear one, but he's coming off an injury. Juwan Jennings made, he had a breakout year last year, provided opportunity with the injury. Well, Ricky Pearsall, after he got back from being shot, he's a pretty good wide receiver too. And ultimately, I just kind of had to stack those three receivers in some order. And so Pearsall ended up being the second of the three, if I remember correctly. Number 48, I got Josh Downs. The Indianapolis receivers, man, we're betting on.
Yeah, you did. You had Juwan Jennings at 52, so Pearsall is your second.
Yep. We got, the Indianapolis receivers are, honestly, as crazy it is to say it, is they're dependent upon whether or not Daniel Jones wins that job. I'm a lot more in on those receivers with Jones at quarterback than I am with Richardson. I don't know what's going to happen with Richardson. I don't know if, is he our generation's, this generation's Jamarcus Russell? I mean, I was thinking about that the other day. It's like he just can't quite put it together, and I don't know. But Josh Downs seemed to establish himself as the slot receiver in Indy. Jaden Reed at 47. You got to put somebody from that 4-man crew in Green Bay up at a reasonable fantasy point, and I think Jaden Reed's the guy for me. Kayshon Boutte, 46. This could go all to hell if they draft Tet McMillan at 4, or they draft Matthew Golden. I don't know. Boutte came into college pretty heralded and had a good freshman year. The play fell off at quarterback a little bit. I think he got dinged up a little bit. His college career didn't end like he wanted, but we saw some flashes of who he could be last year with Drake May. If they being New England, if New England can put together a solid offensive line, give Drake May some time, the potential is there for Boutte to be, I think he could be the team's wide receiver too. I don't know that he has it in him to become, a true wide receiver 1, but I think he could be the team's wide receiver too. And for a little while, I think he's combination of outside receiver. He's got some decent route running, possession moves. He's sturdy. He isn't slight of build, so he can battle. I like Boutte a lot. Number 45, I got Christian Kirk. He could take off in the slot there in Houston. Tank Dell's going to be out. It doesn't look like they're interested in bringing Stephon Diggs back. He looks like a great compliment to Nico Collins there. They're going to grind the ball with Joe Mixon in the backfield. They've got Dalton Schultz at tight end, who, as much as people like Dalton Schultz at the tight end in Houston, he finished behind Tyler Conklin, one spot. At number 44, I got Darnell Mooney. I think him and Michael Penix could be a real lethal combination in Atlanta. he's a deep ball guy. Penix has got a big arm. I think Drake London is going to be the intermediate, the volume guy, the wide receiver one. But I think we saw last year with Mooney, he can put up some numbers. We saw it in Chicago, and I don't think he's lost anything from that. At 43, I got Joshua Palmer. This is based solely on Buffalo is a decently high volume passing offense, and right now it's him and Khalil Shakir at wide receiver. Keon Coleman needs to take a step. I don't know that he's ready, but I've got Palmer at 43. 42, I've got Jacoby Myers. It feels like they're going to, I've seen a lot of mock drafts that have Ted McMillan going to Las Vegas at 6. He would be their wide receiver 1. Much like Kayshon Boutte, though, I think Jacoby Myers could be very productive as the team's wide receiver 2 with Geno Smith. We've seen Geno Smith keep 2 wide receivers with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, and DK Metcalf and Jackson Smith and Jigba. Make them both be very viable for fantasy. So I do like Jacoby Myers. 41, I got Cooper Kupp. I could be way off on Cooper Kupp. He could have 3 more outstanding years in Seattle. But he's been injured a lot recently. He's 32 years old. I think he's going to have some great games. I think you're going to end up disappointed because he's going to have at some point he has one of those dud games where he gets injured and you lose him. He doesn't finish the game. He tries to play through it. He's not productive. He's a tough guy. He tries to get it done. I just think he's running out of time. The sand is ticking in his hourglass. Number 40, I got George Pickens. I just don't know what's going on with the quarterback situation there. And DK Metcalf's the one. It's just that simple. I like Pickens' talent. He's a bit of a head case, it seems, and I'm just unsure of what's going to happen with him. 39, I got Jalen Waddle. I think we saw last year he's the clear number 2 behind Tyreek Hill, and then with Devon Achane being as productive as he is, and now they've got Jonnu Smith at tight end. Waddle is the one that's really suffered from that. And if Tyreek Hill is healthy, I think we're looking at Waddle as a wide receiver 3 kind of player with some good weeks along the way. Number 38, I got Xavier Legette. This is one of those, somebody's got to be the wide receiver 1 in Carolina, and I'm going to go with the young guy they drafted high and see what happens. I could be off by 20 spots in either direction. And at 37, I got Xavier Worthy. Again, I don't know how the receiving core is going to shake out in Kansas City. It feels like if all of them are healthy, it feels like Rashee Rice is the top dog. Xavier Worthy will provide the deep stuff, and Marquise Brown will be the 3. So that's my up to 37.
All right. Well, for me at 50, you talked about Cedric Tillman, small sample size for you. I kind of went the same way. I went with Marvin Mims. They moved up to take him in the second round.
Small sample size. My wife.
Well, for me, Mims really picked up his game after the bye week for Denver. Denver had a week 14 bye, so it was really kind of the last 4 games really taking off there. But, they had been trying to get him involved. I think it took a little bit of time to get that chemistry with Bo Nix. Really, his rookie year, his path to targets was kind of blocked by some of the other people they had. They moved that out. I think he's poised to take another big step in year 3. So I have him there for now. I'm not sold he takes off, but
I have breaking news.
Yeah.
Jameis Winston just signed a 2-year, $8 million deal with up to $16 million for the New York Giants, reported by Jordan Schultz of Fox Sports.
That feels like a killer for Russell Wilson.
Yep.
So
I'd rather see him with Pickens and Metcalf, to be honest. But
yeah, well, we'll see. So that's where I had Mims. I have Christian Kirk at 49. I like the there could be some opportunity for him in Houston, especially with Tank Dell likely out. At least for another year. How long does he have there? Will we get that same production? Sometimes we see receivers struggle a little bit their first year changing teams. 48 for me, Romeo Dubs. I guess I'm a little higher on some of the Packers receivers in general than you are. I don't think Dubs is spectacular, but as a kind of wide receiver 4 possession guy, I think that makes some sense. One of the toughest people for me to rank in this group, I have Tank Dell at 47. And it's a big drop off, but 2 massive leg injuries in a row. This last one, very devastating. They do not think he's going to play in 25. That could leave him going into his 4th year, the last year of his rookie deal, trying to work back. He had a very magical first part of his rookie season, got injured at the end of that season, missed out, was real slow off the blocks, getting going and having production in year 2 before having that massive injury that probably knocks out his 3rd year. I still think there's some upside, but you're basically holding him as a 3rd-year redshirt this year, which gives me pause. And, does he ever get back to where he was as a rookie? We've seen other guys that we liked. I talked about this when I talked about Javonte Williams when we were looking at running backs. He had a great rookie season. I thought for sure that was just a sign of things to come. And, it's been 4 seasons now, and he's never gotten back to that point. And I do worry about that a little bit with Dell. 46, I have Calvin Ridley. He's the number 1 there for Tennessee. Who is their quarterback going to be? We don't know yet. What kind of volume is there going to be? We don't know yet. I still think that he has the potential to go out and give you some big games, but he also has some weeks where he completely disappears. So in the wide receiver 4 range, feels about right. I have Jacoby Myers at 45. He's been an under-the-radar guy for a long time. Right now, he is still the wide receiver 1 there in Las Vegas at the very moment. And I still think they're probably going to do more there. But I've liked what we've seen. If you have him, he's always a good, flex wide receiver 4, bye week starter guy for you. I have George Pickens at 44. I, like you, am concerned not just with increased competition and the question about quarterback, but he straight up disappeared in crucial moments last season. We've started to see some, there were some off the field questions for him coming into the NFL, which is one of the reasons he slipped a little bit in the draft. One of the games he missed down the stretch for the Steelers, he basically got benched because he didn't show up to team meetings and didn't show up. I think he didn't show up on time the day of the game was, the reports that came out. That playoff game, he got heavily targeted and just dropped them or couldn't make things happen, seemed to get in his head and go off the rails. I would not be surprised if this is too high and we see him continue to spin out. 43, I have Cooper Kupp. He's getting up there, but, a new 3-year deal. I think he's in prime position to be a contributor in Seattle. He seems excited to be going back to where he played his college ball. So, I don't think his value is quite dead yet. I have Juwan Jennings at 42. He's an interesting, tough one to rank. He looked like the best receiver for the 49ers at times last year, and there's been talk that, based on how Brandon Ayuk is progressing, Juwan Jennings could be their wide receiver 1 again to start 2025. I don't think he has the long-term upside of a couple of the other guys in that wide receiver group, but he's definitely put himself in a prime position, and I think his development and production more than anything is a big reason why they felt comfortable moving on from Deebo Samuel. I have Xavier Worthy at 41, had a very solid rookie year. Still probably more noted for speed than anything else. If they have all their pieces back healthy, what does that do to his target share? How does he fit long term? He has upside, but this is where I felt comfortable with him. Same for Ricky Pearsall at 40. We saw some good flashes at the end of his rookie year. Obviously got off to a very tough start for his rookie season, getting shot and missing the beginning of the season. But he figures to be one of the opening day starting wide receivers, whether it's him and Juwan Jennings or him and Brandon Ayuk and Juwan Jennings. He figures to have a much bigger role in year 2. I have Xavier Legette at 39. I agree with you. Somebody has to be wide receiver 1 in Carolina. What does that mean in terms of volume? And are we sure it's going to be Legette? We don't know yet. Another guy who showed some good things in year 1, definitely showed that he wasn't going to flame out kind of like Mingo had the year before. But where do we go from there? I have Deebo Samuel at 38. I think he will be a good contributor to the Commanders. They worked on his contract. He should be happier about that. But this feels about right. On the cusp between wide receiver 3 and wide receiver 4. I think McLaurin is still the number 1 there. I think Ertz is still going to be involved. And, Deebo really probably what vaulted him more to higher value a few years ago was he was such a factor in the running game. I don't think that's going to be a big part of his game in Washington. So this is where I felt more comfortable with him. And like you, I struggled with these Colts receivers. I have Josh Downs at 37. I thought he looked like the steadiest and most reliable of the receivers, no matter who was playing quarterback last year. Maybe that's just the kind of receiver he is, and the kind of game he has isn't as volatile as, a bigger wide receiver like Pittman. I still like Pittman, but I've brought him significantly down. We'll talk about him in the next chunk. But I liked what we got from Josh Downs in year 2. Why don't you give us your 36 to 26?
All right. Well, starting at 36, I got Calvin Ridley. I feel like it's going to be Cam Ward there in Tennessee with Levis on the bench. I don't see Levis. I'm not even sure Levis is going to be long for the team. I think they're ready to cut bait. Ridley is the clear number 1 there. They got Van Jefferson and Treylon Burks. So it's all he's gonna be a target hog. Number 35, I got Michael Pittman Jr. And it's a shame. This is a guy that he could be a top 12 wide receiver, given the reasonably good quarterback and offensive coordinator situation. But based on how things are going in Indianapolis, he's sitting at 35 for me. 34, I got Khalil Shakir. I like Shakir a lot. I think right now he's the guy getting the volume in Buffalo. I feel that he's established, he's set, he's the slot guy. But I just don't know that he's going to get enough volume, enough yardage, enough touchdowns to push him up, into wide receiver 2 or even towards wide receiver 1. Number 33, I got Rashee Rice. It's I don't know. I got to put him somewhere, and I feel like he's the best of the 3. He'll be back from his injury. There's still the court stuff going on. He was coming on. He looked really good. I think Rice is a legitimate lead receiver in the NFL. Number 32, I got a stretch of old guys here. And, really it comes down to their age. They're probably all going to finish top 15 this year, which is going to make me feel like I'm an idiot. But I got to remember, look, they're 32, 31, and 30 years old. And these guys are, they got to be somewhere, and in Dynasty, you just can't put them up that high. So at number 32, I got Devontae Adams. He likely has the best quarterback situation. I just don't know how long Matthew Stafford is going to stick it out. if I felt like Stafford was going to stick around for 3 or 4 more years, Adams might be somebody that you could play till he's 35, 36, or 37. But, Puka Nacua is going to get his. Kyron Williams is going to get his on the ground. Number 31, I got Mike Evans. With the onset of the Bucky Irving experience, the return of Chris Godwin, the quasi breakout of Jalen McMillan, and the steadiness of Cade Otton, it feels like this is the year the streak ends. They had Houdini and Carmack the Great and Merlin the Wizard, Harry Potter. They had them all involved last year, getting Mike Evans to that 1,000-yard mark in week 18. But I feel like this is the year it comes to an end. Number 30, I got Tyreek Hill. He's coming off the wrist surgery. I'm a little nervous about Tua's ongoing health concerns, Tyreek's ongoing flirtation with retirement and wanting to leave. Right now, it's all copacetic. But if the season starts to go sideways, we know Tyreek's going to check out. He's done it in the past. He talked last year. He was ready to go. Things weren't going well. I think Tyreek is an immense talent. Number 29, I got Deebo Samuel. I think he's the 2. I don't think there's a question about it. He's the 2 to Terry McLaurin. I think he loses some opportunities to Jaden Daniels running. Zach Ertz is there, and he's going to still be productive. I like Deebo Samuel, but he's, 28 years old now? When we were talking about the San Francisco receivers, I've mentioned it a couple times before, but my initial thought at why they would trade Deebo was, well, he's so much older than Juwan Jennings, and Juwan Jennings broke out. But just note, kids, Deebo and Juwan Jennings are only about 10 months apart in age. So don't let that get you like it almost got me. Number 28, I got Jordan Addison. This could go askew a little bit too with the rookie. Theoretically, a rookie quarterback. You get it. It's his second year, but he missed all of last year. And his history of being hidden at Michigan, maybe he's not that good. Maybe he's, that was just Jim Harbaugh being Jim Harbaugh, and J.J. McCarthy's going to ball out. But I think he has the potential to push for a wide receiver 2 production. He's a touchdown machine, gets the deep ball really well. Oops, I guess I should plug my computer in as I see it start to get dark.
Sun's getting real low.
Then at number 27, got Jamison Williams. This feels like a guy that could go so much higher. I don't think he ever gets the volume that Amon-Ra St. Brown gets. And with Jahmyr Gibbs and Dave Montgomery in that running game, I think that hampers him a little. He's going to have some monster games, and we saw that last year. Super explosive. He can take the jet sweep all the way, so he'll get some carries. He could shoot up and have himself a phenomenal year. But I settled in at 27 with him. And then at 26, I got Cortland Sutton. I kind of feel like at he's turning 30 this year. I know Sean Payton. All I could think was Peyton Manning, and I'm like, that's not it. Sean Payton likes Sutton. He likes that big wide receiver and that role in his and Joe Lombardi's offense. And right now that's Sutton. But it feels like they're adding firepower to this offense in the offseason, and Marvin Mims is coming on. So I think Cortland Sutton will continue to be productive for a few more years, but I do think that we probably saw his best season last year.
I just want to give a shout out. You mentioned the Jameis Winston signing, and I was looking at Twitter. Matt Harmon on December 29th, 2024 said Malik Neighbors dominating the Colts so his team can't draft a rookie QB high and is forced to sign Jameis Winston in free agency, who will pummel him with enough targets that he clears 2,000 yards next season.
He's the seer.
Sometimes it breaks right for you. 36 for me. I have Jordan Addison. I liked what we saw from him last year. He did better than I had expected, not because I don't believe in the talent, but because I had questions about the passing volume in the offense, and I still do. I still feel more comfortable with him probably in this wide receiver 3 range than going higher, even though I think, potentially on a different team, maybe he would be a little higher. At 35, I have Chris Olave. You might think this is low. I am definitely weary of the concussions. It was a problem for him in college. It's a problem that has persisted in professional ranks. It was real bad for him last year. I think he's good when he's out there, but, we were talking about Dynasty too. 1 or 2 more big hits, and it could be curtains for him. 34, I have Jaden Reed. As I mentioned, I'm probably higher on the Packers receivers in general than you are. So, he's my highest ranked one. I think he is probably the best of them, but all those people that thought he was going to be a strong wide receiver 2, maybe pushing for wide receiver 1, I think that's way too optimistic. He's got some big peaks and valleys, and I think we'll continue to have that. I have Michael Pittman Jr. at 33. I brought him down quite a bit. I still like Pittman, but there are questions for me about the Colts. When Daniel Jones looks like he might be your more stable option, that's probably hard for all of us that are rostering Colts receivers. And if they go out and get one of the big tight ends to try to add yet another prime target in there, I think that just hurts all the wide receivers, because even if Richardson takes a step forward, are they going to be a big time passing offense, or are they going to be Arizona Cardinal-esque? Are we hoping that Richardson gets between 37 and 3,900 yards and doesn't kill us with turnovers? That probably is more realistic. I have Jerry Jeudy at 32. I've never been a big Jerry Jeudy fan. He had a decent year last year.
That's putting it mildly.
He's probably the best for the Browns, but there is another team that has a gaping hole at the quarterback. I have Chris Godwin at 30. It's interesting. You and I, we will finish this out when we have our Monday show, but you and I have essentially Godwin and Evans positions flipped. I can see your case. For me, I like Godwin. I feel like he's been more of a complimentary number 2 guy. I think that's why he was comfortable going back there. I like him as my wide receiver 3. And that's kind of the range I have him in for Dynasty. I have Cortland Sutton at 30. I have him a little bit lower than you. I think he's entering the last year of his deal with Denver. There have been rumblings that they're looking at getting a premier wide receiver in the first round of the draft. That gives me a little bit of pause. I love Cortland Sutton. I have since we took him. I thought he was great last year. I just don't, 30 is about as high as I felt like I could go with him.
I've always loved Cortland Sutton. Just never got the breaks.
Yeah. I have Devontae Adams at 29. He's getting older, but I think he's still a good producer, and I think he's going to produce again with the Rams. I think, though, I might disagree with you when you had your stretch of veterans that you thought he had the best quarterback. I think Baker is better than Matthew Stafford right now. No offense to Stafford, but Stafford getting up there battling some injuries. Baker looks like he's in his prime. Rome Odunze is who I have at 28. We saw some good flashes from him in that first year. What is Caleb Williams as a passer? What is that offense going to look like in Chicago? What is his target volume going to be? I feel more comfortable having him in the high-end wide receiver 3 range. I think there's upside for him to grow, but that's where I feel comfortable right now. I have Jalen Waddle at 27. I still like the talent. He has had a good connection with Tua throughout their time. Still questions in Miami. Are we going to end up after 5 games having it be Zach Wilson's team? And then what happens to these guys? They got the running game more involved, but also started targeting Devon Achane a lot more last year. They also targeted Jonnu Smith, more competition for targets. So I felt more comfortable with Waddle here in wide receiver 3 range. And then my 26 is Rashee Rice. I could see him going higher. I could see him going lower. There's his off the field situation, which has hung like a cloud for more than a year now. We still don't know what the resolution of that is going to be. He started off last year on fire, but then when he missed time, that allowed Xavier Worthy to develop and some of their other pieces of their offense to develop. They've spent free agency adding to their running back room. I wouldn't be surprised if they add a running back and a receiver in the draft. Marquise Brown presumably coming back more healthy, more targets. So Rashee Rice, a guy to me that could go up or down, and this is where I landed with him. Before we get out of here, I want to ask you a couple of questions. In this group, 50 to 26, who is your biggest riser?
For me, it's going to be Kayshon Boutte because, was he a free agent or was he a late draft pick? Do you remember?
He was a late draft pick, I think either 5th or 6th round.
So he really wasn't on the radar at all. And to be inside the top 50 with the potential to be as productive as he can be, I just think that even like I said, I expect them to bring in an alpha wide receiver, and they're going to pair well together. And with Pop Douglas or somebody of that ilk in the slot, I think it ends up being good for Kayshon Boutte. I've got him. What do I got him at? 46. He wasn't on my radar as far as rankings or anything last year at all. And I did go out and kind of start to pick him up last year where I could when he started to get a little bit of playing time. And while he didn't always have productive games, he was getting snaps, even in those games where he wasn't always getting targeted, and he made some nice plays. So Boutte was my biggest riser.
I think mine's Jawan Jennings, a guy who it felt like he was kind of on the outside of the wide receiver mix. They had Debo, they had Brandon Ayuk, they took Ricky Pearsall, and at times he looked like their best receiver last year, and I think he's a big part of what they're going to do in 25, and I moved him up. Who is your biggest faller in this range?
Honestly, it's the old guys for me. Tyreek, he was wide receiver 18 last year. He's going to be 31 years old. Evans was wide receiver 13. He's going to be 32 in August. And Devontae Adams last year was wide receiver 14. He's going to be 33 in December. These are all guys that probably were inside the top 20 last year. And I've got them where at outside the top 30 and out.
Yeah, I think for me it's Michael Pittman Jr., who, at one point I had him pressing maybe, to potentially move into the top 12 range, and I still like his talent, but his team situation, quarterback situation just seems like a huge impediment to where I dropped him into this wide receiver 3 range. Who is one guy in this group that if everything broke right, you could see bouncing up into the top 25 or even the top 12?
So a couple of guys that I think could hit the top 25 with the the dice coming up right. Cedric Tillman, team big wide receiver, good route runner, big guy, good hands. We don't know what's going on at quarterback. Definitely there. Feels like it might be Kenny Pickett and Danger Russ moving forward, or who knows? Maybe they go get Shadur or Jackson Dart. The other one, Kayshon Boutte, he feels like a guy that could get enough volume to get into the top 25, but he's going to end up having to contend with an alpha. The one I think could get into the top 12 would be Jameson Williams. I mean, he's just fast. He's got good hands. And if he gets enough volume, he could have one of those, efficient, not high volume, even just an efficient, high yard per catch, explosive, high touchdown kind of years.
I'm going to say for me, it's Jalen Waddle. In 2022, when this Miami offense was humming, Tua was healthy, everybody was healthy. Jalen Waddle was wide receiver 8. Tyreek Hill was wide receiver 2. The last couple of years, whether it's been injuries or Tua missing time, they just haven't been able to put it together. But that's my trepidation, my hesitation to pulling Waddle all the way back into wide receiver 3 range. But if those guys were all healthy and going good and that offense hits its stride again, I think there is every potential for them to get back up into that range, or at least into wide receiver 2 range. Well, that'll do it for us today. We'll be back on Monday with our top 25 wide receivers. Dennis, if people are feeling lonely this weekend, what can they do to fill their time?
Well, before I pitch this to the masses, you doing anything with the NCAA tournament? You a basketball fan at all?
No.
I don't think I watched more than 3 minutes of basketball, all college basketball season. And when I did, it was Ohio State, and they're not even in it. But I have a Empire League that's resetting. And so we're using the tournament to determine who gets to pick first and what draft slot they want. So far, I am sitting at number 2. I don't have high hopes for this. I don't think it's going to end well. I did pick Florida to go all the way, and unfortunately, the guy who's ahead of me also picked Florida, so it feels self-defeating. But that's my foray into the NCAA tournament right now.
Well, as long as Florida doesn't go out this weekend, you're still in the game.
Yep. So if you got some time on your hands, go to your favorite podcast platform, hit that search bar, type in the Fantasy Football Roundtable podcast, give us a subscribe, give us a like. We love that. Leave us a rating and a review.
Yeah, and while you're watching tournament games this weekend, I'll be back on Screener Mountain. That's other than it's hard for me to follow. Other than NFL for us is a 365-day a year pursuit, and then I have a lot of TV and
then movies are a 450-day a year pursuit for you.
They sure are, that and TV. So, well, you guys have a wonderful weekend. Stay warm out there. We will see you. Don't forget, we are back a day early next week on Monday. We're going to be doing quite a few Mondays here for the next month and a half as Dennis gets his groove on as a middle school baseball coach.
That should be something.
Should be something. So we'll give you our top wide receivers on Monday, and then you can be thinking good thoughts for him on Tuesday as he is down the first base line trying to coach those boys to victory. So you guys have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you Monday.
Go Memorial Jaguars.